So let's get into it. These are just some little pieces here. I'm going to go ahead. Give me just 1 second to move this down here so I can see. Perfect. Okay, so we'll have you on mute, which everyone is, and then later on, if you can turn your cameras on for our experience together. If you have questions throughout, we'll just ask you to wait until the end. We're going to do a question and answer, or if you want to remember them, you can put them in the chat, and then we'll go back through there a little bit later. And tonight we've done our welcome and we're going to set our intentions very soon. We'll talk just a little bit about the nervous system. I'm sure some of you that are interested in any sort of work have at least heard of the nervous system and have an idea of what it is doing. And getting to know the nervous system as our best friend is something that can be very rewarding. Then, of course, we're going to talk about microdosing, right? The magic of the mushrooms in a microdose. What is it? What type of medicine are we using? How are you going to feel? Who is this not for? I think that's a very important question, right? Who is this course not meant to serve? And then we'll go into our group practice, which is that somatic dissolving and why we do this at all. And toward the end, we'll take a little break, a few minutes before we get into our Q&A. And that's what we will be doing tonight, friends. Oh, who is that? That is me. It's always so funny doing these with myself. Yes, I'm the founder of Buena Vita, and most importantly, really working with psychedelics, especially psilocybin. I've just been working with so many people, mainly with higher doses of psilocybin. So in our retreats, we work with what's called a macro dose, or some people call it a therapeutic dose, which is a breakthrough dose. Okay, so when we're talking about doses, this is important. Micro, recreational. Some people, the terms, we won't go too deep into this, but now there's all this nuance, right? There's like micro, some people call it a museum dose, which is like very low that you could kind of wander about the city, but it's higher than a microdose. Recreational, which maybe some of you, if you were a teen or in college and you took a recreational dose, it might have been where it was, 1 or 2 grams and things kind of looked a little bit strange and maybe you felt some things. That's considered recreational. And then we have above that is a breakthrough or therapeutic dose, where those of you that have experienced mushrooms know this is when we're changing our consciousness, our brainwave states are changing. We're in a different world than this 3D world for about 3 to 5 hours, really depending on the dose. Sometimes with me, it's a little bit longer, depending on what the mushrooms would like to do. Moving on here. So many of our issues, so many of the things that we perceive to be our problems. Oh, we got somebody in the waiting room here. Let's see if I can let her in. All right, Karen, come on in. We're just getting started. Number one thing I've learned from everyone I work with is they really want to solve everything in their head. It's no fault of our own. We grew up in a society that prizes intellect above all else. So much so that most of us don't really even know the value of any other one of our systems in our body. I think we're just starting to break in right to the gut brain connection. And we go, oh, we might have this other brain in our gut. And now we're starting to see, oh, wait, there's things going on in our heart more than just an organ. There might be some sort of a brain processing type system in our heart. However, when we go through life, we pretty much think that everything is in our head. And to be in your body, maybe you can feel like you're in your body in a yoga class, or maybe you feel in your body like right when you wake up in the morning, right? You're kind of like, oh, more of your consciousness is in there. But I think for most of us, including myself, it took me years to even understand at all what someone said when they said, drop into your body. I was like, what? But aren't I already here? And then I started thinking about it. I started thinking about dropping into my body, which is what most of us do. Um, and so, as you can see, our little central nervous system, right, that's regulating and informing all of our system all of the time. I'm sure you've heard of the fight, flight, freeze, right? Which is, and sometimes people say why am I forgetting the last one? Fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, right? Fawning is not necessarily a nervous system reaction. It's more of a social adaptation. So fawning is when we like get really nice and we're like, it's fine, everything's good. And we just kind of like immediately people please, but like to an extent that we're very unregulated. Sometimes we have multiple sensations. Sometimes, we might fight and freeze, right? We might get really angry, but then also be frozen. And during these, sympathetic reactions, it's everything gets narrowed. All of our information, we can't take almost anything in. We can't process logically. The brain is condensed, the body is condensed. And so when we're chronically, sometimes, right? Some of us have been chronically in this state. We just don't have access to this other side, to being regulated, to feeling connection, having any sort of clarity or insight, right? That spaciousness, you can feel it when there's a spaciousness. Maybe it's a few days on vacation, right? After you get away from everything. Um, and so what we're looking for is that regulation, connection, clarity, which leads to these ways, like we were speaking in the beginning, of more presence and more allowing. But many of the states of stress, anxiety, depression, numbness, I always like to say numbness is a feeling. Being numb and feeling like nothing is coming in is actually a sensation. And it's a really important one because when we go through some exercises and some breath work, which is part of this program, you may go through an entire breath work and be like, I was just numb to everything. And I say, good, good, because some of us are not ready yet. Our system, our body, our super intelligent body is not ready yet to feel some of the things we need to feel. And so it gives us numbness until we start to crack the ice a little bit. And so these states, right, that we think, oh, that maybe they're just caused in the brain by a chemical, misfiring, right? This depression, this numbness. These are signs of stored emotion many times, not always, but many times they're signs of stored emotions. And the reason we know this is because when we begin to free them, so many of these symptoms go away. And I see this all the time with psychedelics, like sometimes it's overnight. I have seen people who have been chronically depressed for 25 years who leave the retreat and they call me and they email me and say, it went away. It is no more. I've seen it, and that's not everyone. And, we can also get into certain habits, which we'll speak about too. But for some of us, once we release, once we let whatever this is go in our body, it is gone. Um, You've likely tried to think your way out of it. Does that really work? Sometimes the logic helps a little bit, like a little bit of a band-aid, right? But these big emotions, the one that keep coming back, they come back in our relationships, they come back at work, those ones that just keep rearing their head, we cannot think them away. And the body holds what the mind cannot process, which leads to chronic inflammation, chronic disease, so many things we're starting to see, there's some science here and there's some there, but we haven't put all of the pieces together yet of what hidden stuck emotions can do in the body. If anyone has ever told a secret or has ever spoken the truth out loud to a family member or to a colleague, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I got that off of my chest, right? You feel the relief instantly. Like all of that is now out and it's moving. That's a perfect example of moving through something stuck in the body. So moving on here, somatic work, the soma. The soma is of the body. That's what a somatic work means. That's all it means. Why is this different than a lot of the therapy? Well, you can see in this cool little animation that we did. I guess not really animation, but it's a picture, right? There's someone sitting on a couch like many of us do, thinking, thinking, thinking. And I mean, if you're like me, you can think about things forever and you could think of a new way and you could think of it again and a thing. And then we have the woman who's working through, right? She's working through her feelings, through her body, through her breath, through sound, all of these different ways that we have to actually let the feeling get as big as it wants. And this is what we're going to do together, especially if you join this course. We're going to go pretty deep in it. It's intense because in the right container where I am holding you and where the other people are going to be holding you, they're holding you in their love, they're holding you in their witness, I like to say, they're witnessing you. even a feeling that seems it's going to take over your whole body, right? A feeling like rage, a feeling like pure anger. If we find it and we locate it and we, with the safety, allow it to even get bigger, we allow it to take up more space, eventually it will break through and it will release. And it maybe it has a memory for you, maybe it has a piece of something important for you to integrate, but maybe it just dies down. And then you'll notice wherever that was being triggered throughout your life, this unbelievable anger, right? This and this and this and this, suddenly there's more spaciousness. It is a miracle. Believe me when I say it is a miracle when you go, oh, wow, that used to put me instantly into a state of freeze. You know, that person used to I just went into rage immediately, and now there is space there. That means that we have done what this woman has done and worked through the feeling itself. This does not, I want to repeat, lead to necessarily forgiving or forgetting or changing relationships. What we're doing here is we're focusing on our own body, our own story that we're telling ourselves, our own emotions, and so that we have the capacity and a little bit more clarity and freedom to then make those decisions in life, right? That might take a little bit more logic, that might take a little bit more thinking through. So this isn't about solving everything, but it's about getting into this container of our own soma, our own body, and listening, getting to be curious about what it's trying to tell us, and letting the mushrooms help us along the way because they're fantastic at that. So breath, sound, and movement are used to bypass the mental loops. Has anyone out there, have you ever been in a mental loop?
No, I want you to hear this. This is Amanda
Oh, hey, Karen.
Bonavita.
I like that she said yes. Would you mind muting? I was going to mute you, but I won't go down there. Um, right? Mental loops. I bet you could probably, if you thought about it right now, you could probably come up with a mental loop that you've been looping for years, right? A story. Why did that person always does this? Oh, this always happens to me. And it just loops on and on and on forever. A lot of you that may be anxious know very well because anxiety loves to just loop, and it loops about the future and it loops about what if this happens, right? That is always what the mind loves to attach onto. And the mind will never, let's just say asterisk, it very rarely lets go. It doesn't say, hey, you've reached the end of your loop and you're done, right? It will continue to feed and feed and feed and give you more fear, more anxiety, more stories. However, with breath, sound, and movement, we're resetting our system gently and naturally as long as we step out of that story. And that's a very important piece of this. All right, who we got here? Two very different people, sometimes within the same hour, right? So we won't be, once we're in this course together, starting May 24th, we won't be doing too much theory. This is actually probably the most information you're going to get from me. Once we all get together, I think we have about 4 people have signed up already. We're gonna do a preparation call together before we actually start the microdosing, before we start the somatic work. That will maybe go into a little bit more of the theory and the questions that you might have. But once we get in there, we're going to get activated together. And the number one reason and the outcome I want everyone to have is feeling an actual shift. I don't want this to be something where you're like, oh, I'm just learning about this. I'm just learning about microdosing and I'm learning about emotions. I want you to have a real, actual, physical, felt sense of a shift in your life, in your relationships, and your most important relationship, the one who's going to be there at the end, you and you. That's the biggest one. That's the most important one. More compassion, more grace, more forgiveness, more space between you and that inner critic. That is the biggest relationship that we're working on here. And if you think you're going to take this course so you can work on your husband or you can work on your friend or that stupid boss, oh, that's not what we're doing. Okay, I'm going to get out of here just real quick. We're going to let in Helen. Come on in, Helen. We're getting going. So here's some of the things we can expect, right? Learning and teaching your body how to drop out of that overthinking. One of the things I used to have it on my wall because it's one of my favorite simple phrases because it happens daily. Overthinking is under feeling. every single time, and you guys, I've been doing this for years and it's still challenging. Every single time even today, I was looping about this. Oh, the people, and they get the right links and the emails. And I went, I'm overthinking, so I'm under feeling. And so I just quieted down and I just took a breath. I sat with my body and I was like, all right, I sent the emails, I sent the links. What's really here? What feeling is here? And it was like, I'm scared. What if no one comes? What if they don't like it? What if I didn't? Okay, okay. I'm nervous. I'm right. And then I started to get into sensations. Oh, my shoulders are kind of clenched in and I feel small. I feel, and then all of a sudden I can, okay, okay. And I let that process through my body. I didn't say, you don't need to be afraid, Amanda. You don't need to do that. You've done this before. And I didn't out logic it. I just let the sensations be true and be real. And I let myself, oh my gosh, magic. I don't know if any of you had a family like this. I would say most of us didn't, who just let us feel our emotions, right? When we were sad as a child, they're like, yeah, that's exactly right. That's perfectly right. You know, not just not, oh, don't you, I'll give you something to be mad about. Oh, I hope that phrase dies with the last generation. I'll give you something to be upset about. It's like, what? Well, why are you giving them more to be upset about? So this sense of grounding and presence, those of you that have ever sat with psychedelics, you know that sometimes after, for example, a mushroom experience, right, there's this sense of like, oh my gosh, I'm here. Just all of me is here. The fullness of myself is now available to me. The fullness of who I am is here, is online, is ready, and it's priceless. And then the emotions, again, like I did today, right? Those I have found in this work, and I have done this, like I had mentioned, with another coach for many years, even the biggest, scariest, most nightmare emotions, they generally will move through in about 3 to 5 minutes. They will move, they will shift, something, the dam will break. And I think the biggest fear that people have going into this work that I did is that I really thought when I told the woman I was working with, I was like, I don't think you understand. Like, some of my emotions are going to take over. They're going to take over my body. They're going to just, they're too much. They're too big. It's been too long. And something she said to me that I didn't believe at first was that your body knows how much you can handle at the time. Like I mentioned earlier, right? Maybe you go through an experience and you only feel numb or you only feel a little bit. That is because at that moment, with the resources you have, your body knows how much you can handle at that time. And then as we expand our capacity, you will expand your ability to hold. This is absolutely true in my life. I can hold, meaning not ignore, but hold so much grief. I can hold so much sadness now and be in it with someone and not trying to fix or escape or move it and just be in the depth of sadness, not be afraid of it, not get consumed by it. And so being able to, this may sound kind of like an esoteric type phrase, but being able to bring more of ourselves into these places. I'm telling you, you guys, right? When we have moments like our parents passing away, when we have moments that are all going to come to us like actual big traumatic moments, and we can bring more of ourselves to be present and to be feeling the truth of those moments. It's what we were meant to do as humans. It's what we were truly, truly meant to do as humans. And then also getting to know our body so that we know this is too much. Now I need to take a break. My system is at full and it's time to pull back. Also getting to know, right, that gas gauge. If you don't, you can't just put a happy sticker over your gas gauge. I love saying that, right? You don't just pretend that you have gas when you don't when you don't, and just put it over there. So it's like take pulling that sticker off. Let's take a look of what is available at different times, and then learning to advocate for that is another piece as well. All right, mushrooms. Oh, we're supposed to be talking about mushrooms. We gotta be talking about mushrooms, right? There's quite a bit on this screen, but there's some pieces I really want to get into here. So the combination of microdosing while doing this work is extremely potent because I began doing the somatic work, these somatic dissolves with no medicine whatsoever, with just breath and movement and sound. And even that is extremely powerful. So a microdose, some of you that weren't here in the beginning, is confused in society, I believe, right now, because some people say, "Oh, I took a microdose and everything was, all the colors were changing and the music was sounded different." A true microdose, and the one that we will be taking, is a sub-perceptual dose, below your perception. Nothing is meant to change, right? You're meant to be able to drive, to go to work, to have a conversation. And yet we know that even at these small amounts, it still is giving us over time the positive brain and body effects that a larger dose of psilocybin would have. The neurogenesis, the plasticity in the brain, more connections between different parts of the brain that don't usually speak. So all of the things that we've seen in the clinical trials around psilocybin, there haven't been too many, only a few on microdosing, but many people anecdotally, hundreds and hundreds, at least that I know for many years, what the main things they report when they start microdosing are cognitive flexibility, right? So the ability to like switch between tasks, to take more things on, to memory, like so increased memory is a huge one that I see. And I have a friend of my parents, he's, I believe, like 79 or so, and has been microdosing. And actually, my parents don't even know because my parents are still very conservative. But he came to me and he knew, and he was starting to have signs of dementia. He was starting to have signs of decline. And I said, look, if you're open to this, I will give you what we have here, which is this called one of the protocols, the Stamets stack. Paul Stamets, he is, if you know of him, he's the top mycologist, scientist, most interesting man. Look up Paul Stamets. And his stack, his recommendation, and I really believe, and he can, if you look up his videos, he can tell you specifically, because he's a scientist, why these three things go together so well in the body, which is psilocybin, right? 1/10 of 1 gram. I believe, to me, 3/10 of 1 gram is a little bit high for most people. So we're going to start around 1/10 of a gram. Lion's mane, which is fabulous for your brain, and then niacin. So niacin has a way of activating the whole stack together. And then the cycle, and that we'll be talking about like once we get into the container together. How much should I be doing this? When do I take days off? But we definitely will be microdosing an hour before each Saturday morning, so that once we get into the container together, once we get into the workshop, that will start to have that flexibility, that openness. It's one of the top results of any of the clinical studies on psilocybin. And of course, it's just, self-reported by the participants is a sense of openness, right? Very hard to describe, but you know it when you feel it, right? I'm just more open to things. I'm more open to ideas. I'm more open to people. My heart feels open. Um, and we could all use that, man. When your heart is open, it's just the most beautiful place to be. And mushrooms really, really, really help with this. Okay. And that is that. Here's me and some of the beautiful ladies that I work with at the Buena Vida. Maybe some of you know some of them, Anna, Autumn, and Sarah. And we are going to get out of here. We're going to stop sharing. I get to take a sip of water. Just gave you guys a lot of information, right? We're using our brains. So that's quite a bit here. Let's take a moment. Take a little, this is what I like to do, something easy. Take a little shake if you can. Maybe shake your shoulder, shake your head, your hands a little bit. You might notice you naturally make a sound. You might naturally take a nice exhale, little stretch. This is a nice, easy way that everybody knows what it means to get in the body, right? These natural, in the morning, right? these little stretches, right? Some things we just do, yeah, like Karen, like over your head. We do these things naturally. I always like to use the example of if anyone has a dog, right? At the end of the day, when they go flop on their dog bed and they take a huge long exhale sometimes. And we do that too, right? You come home at the end of the day, you got your grocery bags, you close the door and you're like, oh. And we make that sound, right? And some people, maybe if you have a partner, they're like, why are you making that puffin sound again? This is a perfect way that we use sound to regulate the vagus nerve, right? Oh, that is a biological reaction to wanting to calm our nervous system. It's actually vibrating the vocal cords is a great way to stimulate the vagus nerve. And so what we're going to be doing here, since all of you are on mute as I take you through this exercise, is there's two things when I work at the retreats that I find most people have a very, very difficult time with. One is sound, is just making a sound, right? So like that, like if we did just an example, if we did a breath, okay, we're going to take a deep breath in and we're going to let it out with a sound. So you can try that if no one's around. I can do it myself and I'll do my hands. We'll do a deep breath in through our nose and a sound. Now, if you notice yourself being like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to, I don't want to hear sound. That's good, right? You're gathering some evidence. Another one, which we won't be doing tonight, but like maybe a part of this is dance, right? Meaning moving the body, maybe even in like a non-rhythmic way. Like just we do this, the first morning of the retreat. And for me, it works on many fronts. And one of those is I get to observe people who are like, their body's like, no, no, right? And I'll say, even if you just want to do this, if you just want to move your shoulders, right? Turn on some music, and maybe this is all you can do the whole class. And some people can't even do that. And I'm like, oh, right? We've taught ourselves through all of these stories and I look stupid or I'm a man or whatever that is of like that we're not allowed to move our bodies. But if there's one thing I know about every culture that's ever existed, I'm just going to go ahead and make this assumption, is that every human sings and dances. Every culture, every place, even us cold, Europeans, right in the north, like we still dance and we sing. And so it is a part of being a human, right? It's not just a part of culture. It's not just a part of ritual. It's a part of your body being a human. And, if you have a lot of stiffness and rigidity in your thinking patterns and you have rigidity in the way that you approach the world, I would guess you probably have a lot of stiffness and rigidity in your body. They tend to go hand in hand. And so instead of solving all of your problems, you can just start literally adding movement and fluidity into your body, and that will inform your mind like, oh, I am a little bit more flexible than I thought that I was. We don't always have to start with changing our mind. All of you here would not be even interested in anything I'm doing if you wanted to do another mindset workshop, right? There's a million of those. Mindset, right? Change your mindset, your mindset. Wonderful. I do mindset work all of the time. It's very important, but there's pieces missing, and the pieces missing are the body. So let's get into it. We're going to move through a somatic experience together. And then after that, we'll have some time for some questions. I'm sure I brought up all kinds of curiosity and some questions. So if you are able to, you can turn your camera on. If you're not, that's perfectly fine. But I just need to know that anyone who's going to be doing this experience with us is just in a safe, grounded place, meaning a chair, a couch, that you're not driving, you're not having to, you're not cooking. If you're doing anything else right now that takes your attention, this just isn't going to work. And so one of the best, most beautiful ways that we always begin, so we begin by closing down the eyes. Notice what your breath does. You might start to take a nice big deep breath there. As we first close our eyes, we begin to scan the body. And we're scanning the body for sensations. Maybe you feel a little tightness across your back. Maybe as you breathe in, you can smell something. Maybe the air is warm, maybe it's cool. Right now I have a little tiny itch on my nose, a little sensation. So scan the body with your breath. Just keep slowly taking a little bit deeper breaths. And without making, see if we can do this. This is a curiosity. We don't need to make a story. And notice that the mind might say, oh, my shoulders are tight because I just work too much and I really need a new mattress. So just notice those narratives, the stories that come along with, oh, yeah, oh, my chest feels a little bit tight. I've been too stressed out lately, and just see what, just observe what the mind does, and then return back into the body. Keep scanning. What do your hips feel like? You can move around a little bit, maybe. What are your knees, your ankles? The body speaks quietly. Subconscious being expressed through the body speaks in symbols, sensations. Sometimes it speaks in images, memories, vibrations. So we use our breath to consistently remind the mind that we are inside the body at the moment. And our favorite phrase here at Buena Vita is that the mind thinks involuntarily like the heart beats involuntarily. It's an amazing meditation teacher of mine. So let the mind do its thoughts. It's going to anyway. Don't fight it. No need to stop the mind. We just use the breath to continue to get back into the body, into the sensations, the vibrations, the energy moving. So as we do this practice, we're going to continue to breathe in through our nose and out through an open mouth, which sounds a little bit like this. And at the end of your exhale, if you can let out every last piece of air, imagine every tiny bit of air in your body is coming all the way out. So many of us do not take proper exhales. We never really get all of that carbon dioxide out before we breathe back in the fresh oxygen through our nose, through our nasal passageways. So just notice that circular breath, that in through the nose and out through the mouth. If that's all you can focus on, it's just the breath, that's enough. That will begin to change your state. It will change the relationship of oxygen and carbon dioxide in your bloodstream. It will begin to pull some of the energy from the frontal lobe of your brain and pull it into some different parts of your brain and change your brainwave states. So all you can do today is just take nice, slow, deep breaths. Congratulations, you are doing somatic work. And for those of us that are ready to do a little bit of a dissolve here, like kind of dissolving some of that stuckness, what I would like you to do is actually bring up into your awareness, into your mind, something that is very big that feels big in your life right now. Maybe it was that word that you spoke about. Maybe it is a situation, someone at work that just keeps getting to you. There's something there. Maybe it's a certain human out in the world that just drives you crazy. Whatever that is, what is it? What feels big right now? Maybe it's not something so negative. Maybe it's a dream you have or an unfulfilled desire. It's like, oh, I always think about that. But allow that story for a moment. Allow that thing to be in your awareness. And you can give it a name, right? You can name it my boss, or you can name it my dream, right? I want to be an artist, my dream. You can name it something, this big thing. Maybe it has a name, maybe it's a person, maybe it's your own self-sabotage, or your anger, your inner critic. But give it a name. Continue to breathe. Keep your eyes closed. And so now that thing or that person, whatever it is, and we're going to do just the first thing that comes to you. The first thing is always the right thing. What does that thing feel like? Maybe it feels first like a description of an emotion, right? It feels like anger. It feels like disappointment. It feels like sadness. So go ahead and give that thing kind of one or two words that you're aware of, just some words that you might use to describe how you feel about this piece. It feels like grief, feels like anxiety. So now we have our thing and we have our word of how it feels. Continue to breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. And if you haven't already yet, go ahead and put your hands somewhere on your body. Maybe your hands on your knees, on your heart, if you'd like to, on your solar plexus, on your tummy. Just put your hands somewhere on your body. And what this is going to do is it's just going to signal to your body, I am safe, I am here, I am grounded. And we have our hands sometimes on our heart or on our stomach. It gives us the felt sensation that we are being held. And know as you hear my voice that you are being held in this container, you are being held by my witness on you, by my love and my care. Continue that breath. And now we have our little thing, and it has an emotion, it has a word or a few words. And we're going to move beyond that in this next piece. We're going to move into, where do you feel this thing in your body? Where does this story live? And you can think about it. I think make you think of the story, and maybe it, oh, my head gets real tight. Or when I think about that, my shoulders really fall. It feels like it's in my shoulders. There's no right or wrong answer here. Even if you feel that you're imagining it, even if you feel that you're making it up, that's completely right. But if this story or this person was living somewhere inside of your body, you can ask with your breath, ask your body, where do I feel this the most? And what I'd like you to do is, once you feel that, even if it's a tiny, tiny little intuition, go ahead and put your hands on that place. So if you felt it in your chest, or maybe you felt it in your head a little bit, kind of give your focus and your attention with your hands to that place. And we're imagining this is where this story lives right now. This is where this grief, this anger, this disappointment, maybe this excitement, this is where it's living right now. Another deep breath. And what we're going to do next, we have the story, we see kind of where it's living right now, is we're going to give this feeling, this person, this story, we're going to give it more space. And what that means is just to imagine, let's say if it's in your heart, in your chest, as you breathe in, it actually gets to take up more space. And with your conscious mind, you welcome that in and you say, hello, hello, grief. You're welcome to take up more space. And with each breath, with the safety that we have here, and know that your body is only going to give you what you can handle right now, let that sensation take up more space. See what happens. Let's give it a few seconds. We're not pushing it away. We're not trying to change it. We're actually letting it in more. Not the story and not who's to blame, but just the sensation. See if you can allow that sensation to really take up space in your body. Your breath keeps you anchored. Your breath keeps you here. And for this last piece, if you feel comfortable, if you'd like to just keep breathing and letting that emotion, letting that sensation be with you, almost as if it was a little child and you are the witness, you are the adult. You can also begin to give this sensation a sound. Give the sensation of movement and just ask, what do you want to move? Do you want to maybe it's for me in my chest, it kind of sounds like, oh. This part may feel a little bit strange and your mind say, I don't know if I can do that, but just experiment. Be a little bit curious, be a little bit open, and see if through your vocal cords you can maybe make the sound that this is making. And don't lose your breath. Always remember, if you're breathing too shallow, take another. Maybe that wants to make a movement. Maybe it wants to shake out of your hands, or it wants to sometimes open my jaw and or maybe it's tender and it just wants you to come in closer, 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 and be sweet. What is this asking for from you right now? Say, you're safe in my body, you're safe to be felt. I'm not trying to change you. I'm not trying to make you go away. Thank you for your lessons. I'm sorry I've been ignoring you. It might take me some time to understand your language, to speak with you. Body, it might take me some time. I'm trying, doing my best. And let's just wait here for another 30 seconds or so and listen. Just really with your hands on your body, wherever they want to be, just listen. A great reminder, maybe you feel numb. Maybe you feel just the tiniest sensation. Maybe the sensation got really big and it started to move and it started to give you some pieces of itself. All of that is correct. All of it. And so to close down this piece, we always, always, always want to honor and thank these parts of ourselves. Maybe it gave you a name, maybe it gave you a color, maybe it just gave you a sensation. Whatever that is, like we said, maybe it was just numbness and stillness. And so we say, thank you, numbness. I honor you, grief. I see you, confusion. Thank you for showing up. And to close, we will all take 3 very, very, very big breaths together when I let you know. And if you would like to end on a sound, I will be ending on a sound, a nice big open mouth release that will calm, calm, calm the body. So let all your air out. Take a nice big breath, forceful breath through your nose. Last bit of air out. On the next one, inhale in, all the way in, a little bit more. One last breath in. If you haven't made a sound, see if you can just make the tiniest, tiniest little sigh if you can. So go ahead and breathe in. Last big one. Feel your feet on the ground or on the couch. Some energy in the lowest part of your body, in your bum, in your feet, your legs. Drawing ourselves back down, down, down here in this moment. You can let your body know we are going to integrate. I'm going to acknowledge you. Whatever came up, I am here, I'm available. And start to move your head side to side. Maybe do a little bit of movement of the neck, some stretches. As always, when you are ready, and return back in with us. Hi there, Martha. We just finished a little practice, so thanks for joining us here at the end. Wow. I didn't think that I was going to go there with you guys. Oh, little do I know. I thought I was just the guide tonight. Oof. I've said it before and I'll say it many times again. Whatever you are feeling is just right. Even if that is skepticism, cynicism, confusion, whatever it is. If you have a tiniest bit of trust that it is right, because sometimes these practices, they really switch on a lot of our defenses and our the ways that we have safely navigated this world. Those being yeah, big ones: cynicism, sarcasm, right? The ways that we, not that there's anything wrong with that. I love a good sarcastic joke, but when those begin to be the blocks, and we say thank you for the work you've done. I now consider myself a squishy skeptic. So I'm still skeptical, but I'm a little bit more permeable than I used to be. But it took about 10 years. Not one afternoon, that's for sure. So with that, I can feel, I know that we're just on Zoom, but I'm also a woo-woo witchy lady, if you get to know me. I can definitely was feeling some big things moving. Even when I always like to say in the yogic traditions, when we close our eyes and do nothing else, you only close your eyes. In those traditions, they say that we shut down 60% of the energy that is coming into us through our eyeballs and through our, like our reticular system. So another thing I find often with a lot of resistance to movement and sound is a resistance to closing our eyes, right? Like people are like, because what is it, right? It's the number one easiest way that you can literally do that mystical thing, which is called go inside, right? It's just, here I am. My eyes are closed. And this is one of my favorite studies of all time. It was a huge percentage, I'm going to forget right now, but it was like 80% of people in a study said they would rather receive an electric shock that was harmful to their body than sit in a room alone with their thoughts. They would rather be shocked and in pain. So give yourself a big round of applause if you were able, right, to just sit with yourself. It is not the easiest thing to do because all the dust and all the stuff, when we just close our eyes consciously, right? Not when we're going to sleep, but when we close our eyes, man, that's where it all is. And so this work is about building in our literal physical bodies the capacity to hold that shitstorm. And if you're gonna work with me, I cuss, so you're gonna have to get used to it. Hopefully not too often, but I mean, it's true, right? Like really, when we sit with ourselves, there may be a shitstorm in there, especially if we have been ignoring it for quite some time. And even, with everything going on in the world. So I would love it if there was anyone out there that wanted to share what they experienced with a reminder that it's all correct. Maybe something surprised you. Maybe you feel like it didn't work, didn't do anything, but whatever your experience was, if you would like to let us know maybe what your word was, what the sensation was, you can just either do your little hand or just go right ahead. I think it seems like Karen might be going to unmute there. Karen.
Sorry about that. No, I honestly have. Um, so my name was Floyd, my fucking inner critic. And I think it was a whole bunch of stuff, anger, exhaustion, numbness, you know. Um, so I, yeah, this was really valuable. And I do hold all of it in my right shoulder. It's been there ever since I was 8, you know, like it went down a whole hell of a lot when I quit emergency medicine, but there's still some unresolved anger, sadness, fear, just frustration over that whole career, you know. Yeah.
And what did I question like what did it feel like when we kind of really allowed that in and allowed it to get bigger, allowed that frustration, that anger? Like would that feel that I was available or did it kind of just want to stick in that one place?
I don't know if you've ever heard sometimes when tigers are, about to launch, that the thing that they do. So that was the sound that I was making. I'm like, where the heck is this coming from? It was like something I'd seen in a National Geographic special when I was a kid. I don't know. But uh, definitely placing my hand over my shoulder was really helpful. You know, um, uh, I still find that I struggle with having that nice, complete breath and realize that, from years of doing this, that trying to work on rolling my shoulders back and allow that deep breath. I've read James Nestor's book, The Breath. I've tried so many things and it's still a struggle. So it's really helpful to have a reminder like this. I think having gone through the retreat with you, the way that you organized everything was just fantastic, you know, with the breath work, the ecstatic dance, all that was really well done.
Hmm. So good to see you again. I haven't seen you in a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
20, what year or 23?
21, 21.
Oh, oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
One of my first, for the longest time, so many, I think I mentioned to you, so much emergency medicine. It's still doctors and nurses still continue to be the top profession that we work with, and so many, and therapists and psychotherapists too, but so much emergency medicine, right? And I love speaking with doctors and nurses who many of them, right, are just, I'm feeling so caged by the system, right? The system and the pharmaceutical system and the admin system. And, I have so much compassion for anyone in the medical field because I know that probably their whole lives, right, even as little kids, and especially as they grew up, they wanted to help others, right? They
Yeah,
cure, they wanted to help. And I think many people find like, they come to this point where they're like, am I really helping anyone? Right? Or am I just kind of, one man told me he was like the head of all these hospitals and he had every plaque on the wall. And he said, I might as well put a medicine dispenser outside my door. He's like, that's how I feel at this point. And so thank you for exploring, right? Exploring many different paradigms and, the breath and the body. And I think this internal medicine system that we have inside of ourselves. And a big part of this I keep calling it a course. It's not really a course, but that's just such a phrase online. But what we're going to be doing together in the 90 minutes is like we're going to be going through some of these dissolves, and I'll be working kind of like one-on-one with a few people each week, and you'll see that when I'm really able to get in there and kind of guide you and like have us both together. And like you said, the animal, this is the animal body that we're working with. And so having those really wild and weird, right? Like just allowing yourself to go there, your animal body will come back online and will know, much like animals do, right? They know how to move things and shake things and get things out of their body, but we seem like as humans, we've forgotten how to do that, right? Because we're civilized and we don't make those sounds and do those things anymore. But when we do, the release is so powerful. And when you're being guided and encouraged, right, to even like make it louder and like, get bigger, right? If I see someone struggling to get bigger, it's like, no, no, get bigger. Like this wants to come out. And, from myself, um, chronic pain and pain stuck in certain places. Like when I first drank ayahuasca many years ago, I guess it's about 11 years ago now, I didn't realize it until I got home a few weeks later that all of a sudden I was getting up and out of bed and I was like, I don't have sciatica anymore. I was like, why don't, I'm like, and to this day, like I've never had sciatica pain, but it was never an intention. I didn't ask that. I didn't think that ayahuasca was gonna cure my physical body. I was like, that's just something I've always kind of had, and it comes and goes, and then it was some sports and stuff. And I've never had it back again to this day. Now, who knows? Who knows? I'm not trying to say that I can, prove that, but many times, like you said, in the shoulder, like these chronic areas that maybe surgery hasn't helped, or like, pain meds have not helped. When we move in these ways and sound in these ways, it is miraculous. I've seen it happen. Those of you that have been retreats have seen it happen in ceremonies. Just unbelievable things because I personally believe philosophically that this whole like brain, body, spirit are not any different. Right? We love to just like, oh, the body does this and the brain does this, and then the spirit or your inner self or whatever, it's all these different systems, but like they're not really all that different. And so if you want to work with one of them, you kind of have to work with all of them, like regardless of what you don't have to have a certain like dogmatic belief about any of it, but not allowing the subconscious mind and the body. I really believe that the body a lot of times is the subconscious mind expressed, right? And I'll see it in the 7-day retreats where someone's body is like closed and their head is down and their shoulders. And then by the end, they don't realize it, but they're walking different and their eyes are different and their head is different. And like their whole way of moving in the world is different. And they weren't consciously doing that. They didn't come there with an intention to like, walk differently. It's just that the body is now expressing a different story, right? A different timeline of like what that person thinks and how they move through the world. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's really, really beautiful. And yeah, that was amazing. Does anybody else would they like to share their word, their sensation, maybe something that surprised you? Teresa? And
All right, friends. So my word was grieving. And as I was sitting here, it's like, okay, my shoulders are a little bit tense, but that's not where grief lives for me. It lives right here in my throat, which is what catches when I'm trying to hold that back and hold that down. It's almost hard to swallow. I get choked up. And so as I was sitting and doing the breathing, um, I started humming on my exhales to sort of move literally this part of my body to sort of move that feeling out. And I started crying, but my throat I didn't feel choked up anymore. It didn't stay here. Um, and it felt like such a release. I actually was grinning as we were closing back down. I was like, okay, this is where grief needed to come out today. So thank you for walking through that with me, Amanda.
thank you, thank you, thank you. What a beautiful share. Yeah, I can, it's funny as you say that, right? When things get trapped and they can't, right? And it's like they both ways, right? Like both receiving way, oh no, and then also the expression. And so now what you've done, and I'd like to point this out, is you've now started to map in your body, right? The grief, the sensation, maybe the word into this place and knowing that sensation of like the trapped, the stuckness. And in your own life, when you have a few minutes, right, and you can notice that that's there, you can give it this space, right? And just, it can be, sometimes I do it like I did earlier before this. It was 2 to 3 minutes where I just sat and I took my breaths, right? Focused upon that area and let it move. Let it move, right? It's just like the mailman, the motions. They're coming, they're delivering the mail, they're moving out. They're coming, they're delivering the mail, they're moving out. But, we're in the house being like, no mail, no, right? And what happens? And you're like, I mean, honestly, you guys, I haven't gotten my mail in like 3 days. It's so funny that I say that because I think my mailman today like didn't have space in my mail. But this is the emotions, right? They're not meant to be trapped. And so when they get so big, when we say stuff like, oh no, I had a friend who told me this, happy-go-lucky guy, right? Chill guy. And he was like, you don't want to see me angry, Amanda. Trust me, you don't want to see when I get angry. And I was like, well, yes, I do. And like in a safe place, right? But when it gets that big, right? When the mail starts piling up, like I promise you though, those emotions, they're teachers. They want to come and teach you something and tell you something. Maybe they want you to set a boundary. Maybe they want you to make a change, right? Anger is such a powerful emotion. And even to my shaman, Santiago, who I used to work with for many years and still work with, he would say, I always remember his voice, he would say, angerness is a very big spirit, right? Because in his tradition of animism, everything has a spirit. And so to him, like the spirit of anger was very large and powerful. But it also makes you move, right? It makes you change. It makes you do something. Anger is actually much more powerful than depression, than numbness, than hopelessness, right? When we start to get angry about something, and then maybe we can change, and maybe we can, oh, and maybe you want to move. So like learning, anger is one of my best friends. I know that sounds crazy. Sometimes I imagine people taking a little clip of me and being like, I love anger. But I really do, because it's this big signal that's there, that's like trying to point me to something, and trying to get me my attention. And it usually means like I've probably not paid attention to something for quite a while and then I'm just real angry about it. And so I've learned to dance with it. And I've learned like sometimes you need to like, hit a wall or like hit a pillow because, and we might do some of this, right? There might be some times when we do some work on the floor or some work on the bed where it's like some of these emotions need little tiny things and some of them need big movement, right? They need like big shaking and release. And what we'll do in the course is after we do these dissolves, every week we're going to do 40 minutes of breath work because that's the integration. That's and if any of you have ever done longer form breath work, more than, 5 to 8 minutes, those first 5 minutes, they can be nice, but it's mostly the ego resisting it. Every single time I've been doing deep breath work practice for about 8 years now, every single time that I do it, my brain's like, I don't want to do this. This is stupid. Why am I doing it? I could be doing anything else right now. Like there's so much resistance in the beginning because we're literally, like we said, moving energy out of the prefrontal cortex. That's like the command center. And as we like change our breath pattern, we're moving it to different parts of the body. And that command center does not like when you do that. But what happens is something takes over after a while, and then all of a sudden you're in the wave of it. And you can start to really have, tears and laughter and emotions and all of these things, messages, visions. I mean, absolute. And there's been, studies on this, like getting into a very similar psychedelic brainwave state that you would with a traditional psychedelic, like, like mushrooms or ayahuasca, when you change your breath. And so, the combination of actually like working with a little bit with the story, a lot with the sensation, with the emotion, and moving into the breath to integrate everything is absolutely powerful. And each week something different will happen. You never know what's going to happen with breath work and what's available there and what's just waiting under the surface for you. It's my absolute favorite practice. And those of you that have been to retreat know that we show you all kinds of different breaths. Anybody else? Anybody else have a little message for us? Would like to share anything that surprised you or how that felt? Everything's welcome. Nothing is negative or positive, however you felt doing that exercise. Maybe your judge was there, maybe your inner child came out. Okay, I'm gonna give it a few more seconds if anyone feels that little heart flutter when you want to share. You're like, oh, I think I I know there's some messages. Oh, we had my husband Trent is gonna sit here. Well, perfectly fine, and he's already there. Hi, Trent. He's sitting in on all your magic stuff, Teresa. That's good. We'll get a little byproduct of it. He's like, yeah, get it in there. All right, friends. Well, um, it's of course I've gone over as I always do. I had a feeling that it takes us some time to move through these places. It's not something you can really rush through, and I really wanted us to have a sensation of what we're going to be getting into. But I'm totally ready for questions. I know some people had even emailed me, where are you getting the mushrooms? How am I going to get them? I have someone who's joining us from Canada who's probably going to be getting her own mushrooms from Canada. A few people have asked me, what if I don't want to microdose and I just want to do, the somatic experience? 100% perfectly fine. Like I said, the first 3 groups of women that I did this with, I had done it with just all women. No medicine. We just showed up each week with our what was going on in our lives or, relationships and um, sometimes getting to witness someone else go through a process was just as powerful as anything that I went through too. And some of those women are still very close in my life. And it was like, we're just friends on Zoom. And somehow, it was really deep. So how are you guys feeling? Anybody have a question? I think Karen, I think you unmuted either about this experience or what we're offering or anything that we went through today. I'm an open.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out the specifics of it. How long would the workshop be? Is it just, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to actually share, and then Susie, I saw that you had unmuted too. Let me
Yeah, I was just wondering about the price and what if over the course of 6 weeks, can't be there. Oh, there we go.
I gotcha. We will have replays available, and I'm gonna make those available for the rest of the year because I found that very valuable the weeks that I couldn't make it in the past to and also just certain times that I wanted to go back and experience again or like something had happened that week. Oops, I just need to move. You guys can see the full screen, right, when I do this? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so the group experience, I've never done this before, but I was using, the magic little numbers that everybody likes to use, like 888 1111. And so this is on the website, which I'm going to link in the chat, which will have everything that's included, but it kind of gives you an idea here. So we'll be together each Saturday. At the very top there, you see 11 a.m. Central, so there'll be 9 a.m. Pacific, starting May 24th. And going through the end of June. So yeah, like for example, in the one that I was in before, I think there was like 1 week that I missed, and every now and then there'd be where you would watch the replay. What we're going to be moving through, and we're going to do this organically, is really moving through some of the bigger specific emotions, right? So there's going to be where we're kind of focusing that week. And so outside of the class, I'll give you guys some journal prompts and maybe like a podcast, like just some things like around grief, anger, sadness. And then as we kind of go through the journey, we're going to move into these expansive, like joy, connectedness, belonging, which I promise you, because I've done it, are some of the harder ones, right? Belonging to a group, experiencing joy and pleasure can be really challenging. There can be a lot of challenge around, even the stories in our body of like what it means to belong. All right. Am I worthy of feeling joy in all of my cells and all of so, but we'll like move kind of through that. And then each week, naturally something different might come up. But what I would like us to do is like spend that week before, even if it's just a few minutes a day, right? Kind of like if it's grief one week, to be like, where is there? I think grief is probably grief and shame are the two most unfelt emotions that we just don't have tools for. Again, this is why this is called How to Feel, because it's like, why didn't someone teach me this when I was like 6 years old and 7 years old and 9 years old, right? Someone said, oh, okay, you're feeling this. Here's how you do it. Here's how you breathe. Here's how you listen to it. Does it have a message for you? Like, I can't wait someday. And I know some people that do this, that teach this to children. I've seen it. I've seen some of my girlfriends who focus and sit with their children as they're going through an emotion, and they witness it and they let it happen, right? And they don't rush them through it. Those children are well, the ones that I know, like 3 in Costa Rica, just unbelievably wise and intelligent. They pick up on things. They can name their emotions. And again, I've seen it happen. It takes 2 to 3 minutes. It's not that long if you really let it take its course and someone's there to let the thing take its course. Unfortunately, we're not never really taught that. I'm going to cap the group, I think, at 12 people. I don't want it to be any more than that. I'm thinking that that's going to be a pretty good size. And like I said, I think we have 4 right now. And Teresa's one of them. And I'm so excited. And we'll have some integration.
Amanda,
Oh, yeah.
sorry, I do have a quick question. I noticed on one of the slides that it talks about group practice. So can you go over a little bit about what it means to participate in terms of group sharing or group participation?
Yeah, so very similar to what we did today. We will be going through, usually the way that it kind of works out with the time is that 2 to 4 people every week will have the time to, like, I will guide them through like a big dissolve, like something that they're going through, something that they're moving through. And what ends up happening is that the rest of the group, let's say, if you and I were kind of doing one, the rest of the group is holding space, but so much ends up happening for them too. So they're also going through this process. And we'll talk a little bit more on that on like the preparation call of like what it looks like to be in that space. And then we'll all have that time to do breath work together. And it will be different each week, the type of breath that we're using, depending on what we're moving through. And then there's going to be, quite a bit of integration and sharing and yeah, kind of walking us through that. So this is just like I always love to work. This is a group experience. It's my favorite way. I do have the deep dive is where we spend some time one-on-one together. And I was just thinking this today on a walk. I've been kind of obsessed with this lately, this whole thing. I really love if people let me, if they trust me to like dig in really deep, because I have that intuition and I have a way of like almost like seeing and hearing what's happening of, protectors or like different things in the way of what might need to come through. And that would be more of a one-on-one container. But yeah, the group experience that's where it's all at, baby. And again, the deep dive is the group with, and then also a session with me. So it's all inclusive of that. Plus we get to work together a little bit too. Make sense? I'm doing this real soon. I was looking at all the advice online. They're like, oh, you gotta wait months and you gotta do this and that. And I was like, I think the right people will come. And, maybe it will end up being 4 of us. Maybe it will be 6 of us. Who knows? We're not quite sure yet, but okay. I'm gonna get out of that. I stop my sharing. What else is coming up for you guys around the mushrooms, around anything at all? I'm gonna leave the website in the chat. I know you guys got to go. If anybody has to go, again, we're like 36 minutes over, so no problem. But I'm going to leave you the link in the chat here. Buena vida. I just made this. There you go. And as always, our email, which is just me or Shandy, we're the only ones that answer it. So you'll get either, it will say Amanda or Shandy or both of us. There's our email address with follow-ups and questions. And, this is confusing me. I just, right now, like made the web page, right, just from my own knowledge. But as I start to get more questions in, like, the first few were, can I do this without microdosing? So I added that kind of to like the frequently asked questions, right? So as we start to, I fully understand this work because I've just done it for a long time, but this is very, very new to many people. And so, anything I can do to help communicate exactly what magic might happen. How about you, Carrie Jo? How you feeling?
I'm good. Um, I've been doing a lot of emotional releasing work in many different ways. This does sound very interesting, but I think I'm doing so much already. I went and had this session. It was, what is it called? Access Your Subconscious, and it's Bar 32.
I haven't heard of that.
It's very hard to find, but you have to put in access consciousness. I put it on our feed the other day, and there's 32 points on the head, and they hold on to. And really, the woman said she only did 4 points on my head, and we worked for like an hour and a half. So she closed me up and said, come back and do more in it. And it's weird, like you say, find the pain. It's like as soon as she opened me up, my right arm just had an excruciating pain all the way down it. And she said, that's your male side. And I was holding baggage from men in my life. And so she tried to help me do some releasing for that. So, I've read a book on this whole somatic stuff too. So it's hard for me to do by myself. But it's very interesting. I like it.
I agree. It's much more challenging. It takes a lot more practice to do it on ourselves. Like, this is why I still to this day am a part of these, right? I still have a coach. I still have groups I go to. Someone the other day on our Sunday session, I think it was Carmen, who comes every week, she said, there's something about doing breath work in the group, even though it's Zoom, right? Which makes really no sense, right? You're on Zoom, like you're in your room, there's just people on a screen and there's music playing. Like, why is it different? There's something about someone else being there, or like a group shared intention when we do this work.
Mm-hmm.
It just amplifies something. And maybe someday we'll figure out why that is, but until then, we just get that kind of felt sense that like, oh, okay, need somebody to, it's almost like we're meant to be helped by other people. Not funny. It's almost like we're meant to do that. We're meant to be. Something you said reminded me of this, and it was like, I feel like I want to write about this or explain this in a way, but it was this really deep, kind of like learning that came to me the other day. Like when you said like your arm and like the male and the stories and all of this, is the phrase that a lot of people, as you're beginning to heal or look at your like father wounds or your mother wounds, right? The big ones. Those are big ones. Everyone has them. I've never talked to my parents about my father wound or mother wound. It has nothing to do with blaming them, but it's how we really relate to the world in a lot of ways once we discover the ways that, we all had this kind of like idealized version of who these people were supposed to be, and then they're humans, right? So the phrase that everyone says about that is like, they were doing the best that they can, right? We all say that, which is true, right? They were doing the best. Yeah, my dad was a little bit like this, my mom, but they were doing the best they can. And what learning I had around that thing is I was like, oh, that's the exact opposite of like what we're meant to be doing when we move these emotions through the body. That's our adult conscious self saying to our child, hey, here's a logical explanation about why you didn't have the attention you needed. Here's a logical explanation about why, your father was absent. But meanwhile, in our body, to our inner child, they don't have that ability. They literally, until age 7 or 8, you don't have the ability to make sense cognitively of something like someone's doing the best that they can. And so to a child or to our body or to your right arm or to any part of your body, it's still painful and it still matters. And that's why, we say things like trauma was not your fault, but it is your responsibility, right? It is our responsibility to work through it somehow. And not to just be someone who's blaming. It's so funny. I've worked with some people whose parents have passed away 10, 15 years ago, and they are still so mad at them. They're still so resentful. So like even in death, it doesn't go away until we deal with it, right? Until we face it and like really see it. And there's many different ways, right? There's these different kind of like esoteric ways, and there's like different ways to deal with it. But that phrase is how we put logical band-aids on a lot of things by, you know, they were doing the best that they can and da 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 da, and that's how they grew up and da 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 da. And it's like that doesn't really, it doesn't ever really change anything. It's a nice thing to say to someone, right? It's a nice way to have like compassion and forgiveness, but it's not ever usually getting at like the emotional state. So that's what we're gonna do. All right, friends, I'm gonna get going. 8:42. My dog's just scratching at my leg as always when I do these late ones. He's like, we were supposed to go out like an hour ago.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. This was such a joy. Thank you all so much. Thank you,
See you,
Karina.
Teresa.
Thank you, Gary. Have a good night, y'all. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night, Karina.